Hello, my name is Jordan, and for my final research project, I chose to focus on AIDS under the Reagan administration. So this exact time period spans from 1981 to about 1989. So throughout all of my research, the main key question that I focused on was what changes were made in the AIDS social movement during this time period, so the 1980s. The first term that kind of caught me off guard during my research was this term gay cancer. And so there was a lot of initial confusion over this disease, and because a lot of people thought it was a gay disease, they initially named it gay cancer. And so there was negative public perception because of this, which led to a lot of hesitancy for activism. So we didn't start seeing activist groups form until later on in this time period. So there was still a continued large amount of homophobia that we saw, and a lot of distancing of the gay community within the United States specifically. And as we see in a couple of these images, a lot of the gay community wanted to focus on research instead of the large amount of hysteria that was spreading. And then we do actually begin to see activists stepping in. So a few of the major actions that happened during this time period. The AIDS name was actually given by the CDC in the early 1980s. Activists began to join together in San Francisco, and that's where a large amount of the initial cases were found. So that's where a lot of the grassroots movements actually began. Healthcare officials began to research the disease and try to understand what is going on. However, a lot of misinformation continued to be spread surrounding the disease. ACT UP was founded in 1987, and this was a large activist organization that focused on publicizing the AIDS movement and gaining traction for it. So they did a lot of protests, protesting against the government and things like that. So actually doing sit-ins and making their voices be heard. And a lot of their mantra surrounded the silence equals death phrase. The AIDS Memorial Quilt, which is still in San Francisco today, was also created, and it's this ginormous piece of art that remembers AIDS victims who had lost their lives at that time. And then I wanted to mention a few of the top activists that I came across during my research. So the first one, Bobby Campbell, I've done a lot of research in the past on him, and he was known as the poster child of AIDS. So he kind of put AIDS on the map and actually spoke out against the government and other groups as to why nobody's doing anything for AIDS. Larry Kramer, like I said, ACT UP was founded in 1987 by Larry Kramer. And then Dr. Koop, who I'll talk about in a little bit. And I wanted to include a few of these images to just kind of get a good idea of what the movement kind of looked at this time. So as you can see, a lot of anti-Reagan posters, as well as this silence equals death phrase that was used. So during my research, the question I continued to ask was, where is Reagan? So his press secretary, Larry Speakes, who held a lot of the public press conferences during this time period. In 1984, while 4,200 people are already dead from AIDS, he was asked if the president is concerned, and he responded that he has not expressed any concern. He leads this press conference on to actually joke about AIDS and basically discounts the entire movement that's happening. In 1985 is when Ronald Reagan actually addresses AIDS for the first time. And then despite the lack of interest or motivation to do anything, the Reagan administration did release the report on AIDS that was run by Dr. General Koop, and they sent informational packets to every house in the United States. I wanted to include this graph just to show the major death toll that took place. So as you see in the end of the Reagan administration, it was close to about 100,000 AIDS deaths in the United States. And to conclude, I just wanted to put in a few different pieces of information that I just learned about social change in general relating to the AIDS movement. So social change does take time to initiate. The public perception of the movement affects the success of the movement. And in order for this movement to be successful, the people in power must stand behind it. So thank you so much for listening to my presentation, and I look forward to a great discussion on this topic.